Welcome to a Finding God in Video Games Rewind, and today we are taking a look back at Tomb Raider. So you think of Tomb Raider, let's just think of a few words, right? Strong, fierce, driven, fearless, bold. These character qualities show up in many of our favorite game characters, but few have had the longevity and the ability to overcome both in-game and real-world obstacles like our favorite Tomb Raider, Ms. Lara Croft. She tore down the male-driven archetype of gaming at a time where strong female role models simply didn't exist. She didn't need a romantic subplot to define her, and her ability to play with the big boys made her a cultural phenomenon. But perhaps her largest accomplishment wasn't just to tear down the walls of the gender stereotypes of males as the lead game characters in the 1990s, but something much more difficult. She survived being in a series of really poor games and lived to tell about it, coming out stronger in the end, reborn and better than ever. Her path to the top was derailed by circumstances far outside of her control, but she emerged from the ashes of her previous efforts to regain prominence for a whole new generation of gamers in her more recent titles. She experienced what we call in the gaming industry a reboot, retaining the core of what made her special, but completely remaking her and her surroundings, delivering a new series of stories in her rebirth as a gaming icon. But to many people's surprise, she is far from the original Tomb Raider. No, about 2,000 years ago, a much different but equally bold and strong female was raiding the most famous tomb in humanity's history, the tomb of Jesus Christ. To properly live through this story, I'm going to ask you to forget what you already know about these events and just walk through the footsteps of our protagonist, a real-life role model for men and women alike the world over, a person just as bold, strong, and fearless as Lady Croft. The woman known as Mary Magdalene. 2 millennia ago, the world was a much different place, and especially for women. Men dominated the political, military, and financial world to a great degree. And in the culture Mary grew up in, women were often treated as commodities or assets, a symbol of status for their husband, valued for their skills more than their substance. On second thought, maybe the world hasn't changed as much as we all hoped, to our shame. But I digress. Let's keep our eyes on Mary, as she is destined for a place in history that no man will ever hold. She's only mentioned in Scripture a handful of times. We first see her as a footnote to the followers of Jesus, with the aside mention that she had 7 demons cast out of her. And without interpolating into that too much, let's just say that's 7 more demons than anyone would want to carry around with them, if we had a choice in the matter. She had an identity that was unfortunately based on who she had been, and what she was most well known for, and what she had been delivered from. And if you've been there, trust me, I kind of get what that feels like. So let's continue on. After her deliverance, she is noted as a follower of Jesus, included in the group of women who were his loyal providers. We get little glances at Mary as her story's overshadowed by the boisterous Peter, fiery James and John, the traitorous Judas. But her relegation to the shadows only serves to underscore what will soon follow. After Jesus' death and burial, all of the manly men who made up the frontline disciples were in hiding, too fearful to show their faces in public as they chose the path of least resistance. But not our Mary. Oh no, she was right there at the foot of the cross, staying with Jesus until the bitter end. Did I say bitter end? Well, she wasn't finished yet. She sure wasn't about to allow her Lord to lay in a tomb without the proper respect given and honor services performed, regardless of the consequences. With a boldness that all of those bearded, macho, muscular men around her lacked, Mary and our collection of loyal female followers marched to the tomb to show their commitment to the one man who had never let them down, even in death. And this is where the story of the original Tomb Raider turns supernatural. It's time to raid that tomb. See, Mary Magdalene was standing outside the tomb weeping. She decided to check out the tomb, and in John chapter 20, we pick up with her peering into the empty tomb. And in this moment, her weeping and searching for her fallen master interrupted Jesus on his way back to the Father. Just let that sink in for a moment. Jesus had just accomplished his earthly mission, and he was heading back up to heaven. And he observed this loyal follower, and he couldn't help himself but to stop and comfort her. And when she realized it was him, he even informed her that she couldn't even touch him because he had not yet ascended to the Father. Right there, I'd like to pause and just absorb that for a minute. Jesus stopped on his way to God the Father for Mary Magdalene. Why? It's simple. Because she was searching for him. And he is committed to being found by all who search for him. No matter what we've struggled with, what we've been delivered from, Jesus will literally stop in his tracks for each of us to be found by us if we're truly interested in finding him. Mary Magdalene, the tomb raider of the most famous tomb in human history, holds the distinction of being the first to see Jesus when he rose from the dead. Not Peter, not James, not John, but Mary, because she never stopped looking for him. And that can be our story too. Mary Magdalene experienced a full reboot of her life and was reborn as the woman who would never stop following Jesus. Through his death, burial, and resurrection, she remained a constant while the others ran and hid. And maybe we have a few things in our past that bring us shame, even if we've already been delivered from them. I know I've carried a lot of that guilt for myself much longer than I ever should have. The knowledge of what I was delivered from, defining me much like Mary's deliverance, seemed to be the most noteworthy part of her. But that is not the end of our stories, and it does not define us. It's how closely we choose to stick to Jesus that will determine what our lasting legacy is. For Mary, she'll always be the woman who brought the ascending Son of God to a standstill outside of an empty tomb. So let's cast off all the old descriptions that are on our lives and embrace our relationship with him as the defining characteristic of our lives. He has stopped what he is doing to see how we respond to his call.